An important balance. We are to be witnesses for Christ in the world without becoming conformed to the world. Here's Dr. Gene Getz to explain.
This principle comes from several of the Proverbs. For example, if we go backwards a little bit to chapter 13, verse 20, I've called this one close associations. And that word associations is very important. It's more than just casual. And you can see that from the proverb. The one who walks with the wise will become wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm. Now, you see the significance of what I said by close associations, because to walk with someone implies that you're in close fellowship with them. And what this proverb says, that's dangerous. He uses another word here, companionship. When you're literally a companion, you're just not a casual person walking along and saying hi to somebody, but you're a companion. And that, of course, can lead to serious, serious problems. Now, if we jump ahead, again following this theme in Proverbs, to chapter 22, verses 24 and 25, you'll notice I call this friendship, companionship. And you see this is inherent right in this proverb. Don't make friends with an angry man. And don't be a companion of a hot-tempered man, or you will learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare. A very graphic description of what happens when we have inappropriate associations, inappropriate fellowship. And jumping to the New Testament, Paul deals with this concept of inappropriate fellowship. He's writing to the Corinthians who were having inappropriate fellowship. Notice what he said. I wrote to you in a letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. Now, when he says associate, he's talking about a very close relationship. He's talking about friendship. He goes on to say, I did not mean the immoral people of this world or the greedy and swindlers or idolaters. Otherwise, you would have to leave the world. What's he talking about? Well, he goes on to explain. But now I am writing you not to associate with anyone who claims to be a believer who is sexually immoral or greedy, an idolater or verbally abusive, a drunkard or a swindler. Do not even eat with such a person. In other words, what the Apostle Paul is saying here is that once you become a believer and you are with other people who claim to be believers, if they're engaging in these activities, which are a violation of the will of God, you should not associate with them. Doesn't mean you can't love them, can't mean you can't confront them, but it means you should not be a close friend in association with them, because chances are, more than chances are, as the proverb states, you may become like them. You will engage in their sinful behavior. So this is a very, very important New Testament perspective on this proverb. Here are a couple of things that I think Paul really had in mind. And so let me just share this propositionally, and then we can comment on it. Having a close fellowship with people who claim to be Christians, but who are living sinful lives, can easily lead to the same results in Proverbs 13:20, the verses we just looked at. We are in danger of imitating their lifestyle. And that's what the Apostle Paul really is underscoring here. And just think about that. Think of some of the Christians that you know, for example, who began dating someone who claims to be a Christian, but who did not have the same values as the Bible teaches. It takes a very strong person, once they become a close friend, not to succumb to the behavior of that person or what that person wants to do that's a violation of the will of God. So this is a very practical concept in relationship to this principle. Another thought that I think Paul has in mind here, he's being very realistic. We cannot remove ourselves from the world. It's impossible. And furthermore, to try to do so is to violate the very reason Jesus came, which was to save the world. In other words, it was Jesus who said, go into all the world and teach, make disciples, proclaim the gospel of Jesus. We are, in that sense, to be with those in the world in order to communicate the gospel of Jesus. And it certainly doesn't mean that we cannot have a friendly relationship. But to have a friendly relationship is not what Paul is warning against. He's warning against associations. He's talking about being in partnership with them in various ways. That can lead, even in the business world, can lead to dishonesty. It can lead to a violation of the will of God because we're in business with someone who actually has values that are different from ours. And we can begin to feel the pressure of that and succumb to doing things that we ought not to do. And so the principle reads this way. We're to be witnesses for Christ in the world without becoming conformed to the world. And here's a question for reflection and response. What happens when Christians go to extremes? Withdrawing from the world or becoming like the world? It's very interesting that there are religious groups who look at the phrase in English, particularly in the King James Version, that says we're to be peculiar people. And they interpret that as being peculiar. And the fact of the matter is that they define being peculiar by the way they dress. Now, obviously, we're not dealing here with the concept of modesty. We're dealing here with the concept of dress that is peculiar. We look different because of the way we dress. And this is not what Paul's talking about. What Paul is talking about is we are peculiar because of our love for God and our love for one another. That is what Paul is talking about. We are different because of what God has done in our lives, and we're walking in the Spirit, not according to the flesh. Now, the other side is to compromise our values. And there are Christians who actually compromise their values, and they move from legalism to license. And they say, I'm going to do this in order to win people for Christ. And if they're not careful, they can step over the line and they're rationalizing and engaging in behavior that is a violation of the will of God. So basically, what this principle is saying is that we need balance. And here is the principle once again. Let me just state it. We're to be witnesses for Christ in the world without becoming conformed to the world.